Oh dear God, why does no one talk about how horrible this scene is? Like, people do, but then it's still like their favorite book. Like, how do you excuse this scene? I mean this as an honest question. Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to kick off the start of a new reading vlog. I had a really fun idea, and that was to revisit one of my most hated horror books that I've ever read, one of my most unpopular opinions, and that's the fact that I read It by Stephen King several years ago and only gave it 2 stars. I actually really love the new movie, but in terms of the book, I had really mediocre experience reading it the first time around, and I do think that a lot of that really had to do with expectations. So I first picked up the book when I saw the trailer for part 1 of It, and I thought it was just going to be a super scary clown book, and of course there is an element of that with Pennywise, but I really didn't know what the book was truly about. I didn't really understand the underlying themes, and so when I went to read the book, I was honestly really disappointed, and certain aspects of the book, I'm looking at you ending, certainly disappointed me or bothered me or just kind of turned me off, and so I ended up giving the book a really low rating. But since then I've read so much more horror, I've read more Stephen King, and I really feel like I would appreciate it more this time around. I've really fallen in love with coming of age stories and children versus evil stories, and so again, because my tastes have changed so much over the years, I've been really curious to reread this one and see if I can fall in love with it like so many other horror readers do. So I thought it would be fun to vlog it all with you, and I'm going to keep this generally spoiler free, so even if you haven't read the book, you're free to check this out. I'm going to reference some things along the way, but you'll see what I mean, and I'm going to keep it just fun and light, and hopefully this doesn't go horribly wrong. I'm terribly nervous, but if you are watching this, it means that I did finish out the vlog, finish out the book, and you can follow along in my journey. Oh, and I do want to mention that I will have some life clips within this video, but if you're just here for the book discussion, don't worry, I'm going to have timestamps so that you can skip over those parts and just get to the good stuff. But if you want to see a little bit more of my life outside of these bookshelves, then hopefully you'll enjoy seeing a little bit of my personal life. And let me know if you want to see more vlogs like this, because I don't do a lot of my channel, but I'm experimenting with it, especially as my kid's getting older, to see if it works to do. Some people really love it, some people don't. I don't think I'm a natural, but we'll try it out and see how we like it. All that being said, let's get started. So initial thoughts after finishing the first 2 chapters, and I am going to do my best to keep this spoiler free, but I am going to make references to things, so for those of you that actually have read the book or seen the movies, hopefully this will just be, interesting enough, but not giving away the whole plot for those of you that haven't checked it out yet and are still interested in and just want to know my opinion. So after reading the first few chapters, I am cautiously very optimistic. I am really into it so far, which makes me nervous because usually that means that partway through this vlog, things are going to go terribly wrong. But right now I'm very much invested in the story. Of course, in the first chapter we have the interactions between George and his brother Bill. I love that Bill has a stutter. Of course, I know that's a nod to Stephen King's own childhood and the stutter that he experienced. And then you have just their cute relationship. You have George going into the cellar, and of course, spooky things. And I think it's a good setup because it's kind of playing about okay, where is the horror elements of the story going to be? And of course it ends up being somewhere else. You have the scene at the drain, and I loved it. I have watched part 1 of it and part 2 of the new one, and so I definitely had the visuals in mind as I was watching that scene. And I gotta say, I think the book's actually more gruesome in what it describes. I definitely feel like the movie played it safe and didn't actually show as much as the book would have. And so yeah, I was really into part 1, or the first chapter I should say, and then I went on to chapter 2, which I will describe as the homophobic chapter. And I do think that the first time I read this was a turnoff for me because there's just a lot of homophobia. There are terrible things that happen to gay people, which unfortunately is an overused trope in horror and other literature and movies. And so it was a bit of a turnoff for me the first time around. I will say I don't love it this time, but I do respect the difference between character views versus an authorial voice, and I don't think that Stephen King, based off what I know, I've kind of seen him on Twitter, things like that, he seems to be a very progressive, open individual, so I like to think that this book is a bit of its time, and also the fact that it's more the town having an influence, and that these chapters or these parts are meant to really show the darkness of the town, versus Stephen King being like, hey, we can do terrible things to gay people. So I definitely, rereading it now, I do think I'm a bit more of an analytical reader, or at least a little bit more nuanced. When I see something like this, I can hopefully kind of separate, again, the book from the author and realize that you can be saying terrible things without actually meaning or believing them. So I'm going with that interpretation. I hope I'm not wrong in it. But yeah, off to a really good start. I'm very much excited to see it. And I think it's just this time around, I've read so much more horror, which is often my complaint. I often say that I'm so tired of seeing the same tropes, the same stories, and over again. But in a case like this, I think it works really well because I can see that it's very well done. It's a classic coming of age story, the boys versus evil. And now I feel like I get the book in a way that I wasn't understanding or getting it the first time. Because like I said, I had very surface level ideas about what this book was going to be, and when it wasn't just a crazy clown the whole way through as it was kind of in the first chapter, it kind of lost my attention the first time. So fingers crossed, we are off to a good start. Let's hope that it stays that way. Hey, so this is my thoughts as of chapter 3. I promise I'm not going to give you chapter by chapter updates, but at the beginning I just feel like I have a lot more to say. We're still in the setup, and so again, as we get further in, I'll be talking less about the specific plot, but at this point we finally get to see the children as they become adults, and so we get that time jump, and I'm definitely getting more out of it this time around. So first off, we get to see Bill, or William, and I love that he is not only a writer, but a horror writer. Definitely can see some nods to Stephen King's own career, and I love the commentary on being specifically a horror writer and the judgment that comes with that. Also, very much connected, this time I connected again. I connected with the last time. The infertility plot line is something very near and dear to my heart. And I just love the fact that it really deals with the fact that they know that something happened as children, or really they just have like a vague memory of something being wrong, but they've kind of forgotten it. So it's a little bit almost magical in nature or supernatural, where they're, they should just remember this iconic part of their childhood, but they don't. And so if you're reading it for the first time, you of course are left to kind of puzzle out what's happening as the story progresses. So this time around, I'm really appreciating the narrative framework. I think it's very well done. Also, I'm really appreciating that I've grown as a reader to understand the difference between characters' thoughts and the authorial voice, because there's definitely a lot of anti-Semitic stereotypes and thoughts and all that in this part, but I recognize that is not necessarily Stephen King saying that, but his characters and just the challenges that they're facing as Jewish persons. So yeah, overall really enjoying it, and I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop and for me to suddenly hate this one. But this time around, yeah, I'm seeing so much that I missed the first time, or seeing things that I completely misinterpreted the first time. For me, I think it just really benefits from the fact that I know where the story's going at this point. So again, I'll keep it vague for those of you who haven't watched the movie or read the book, but once you actually know the full picture of what Stephen King is trying to say with this book, and it's not just a scary, creepy clown book, because I was totally missing the point the first time, I actually am appreciating what he's doing, and so far it's pretty great. All right, gotta get to work. Okay, bye. Okay, I just finished the infamous sewer scene. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. If you don't, I'm not going to spoil it, but you should probably go look it up yourself before reading this book. The first time I read this scene, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. No one warned me about this scene, so I went into it completely blind and was completely scarred for life. This time I knew it was coming, and I thought that that would help. I thought that it would make it better because I knew what to expect, but somehow it was so much worse this time around. Oh dear God, why does no one talk about how horrible this scene is? Like, people do, but then it's still like their favorite book. Like, how do you excuse this scene? I mean this as an honest question. Comments please down below. Explain to me how you forgive this book for this disgusting scene. It's so bad. Like, I just need to like go and like take a shower and like, ugh, like I feel dirty for reading this scene. Like, and I read a lot of messed up books, but dear God, that was bad. That was so bad. Like, wow. So I'm going to have to take a minute and try to de-stress, and then I will come back once I finish up the book and give you my final thoughts. But yeah, right now I need a minute, so I'll be back. All right, so I've now finished the book. I've also had a chance to think a little bit more about the sewer scene. I still don't love it, don't get me wrong. I do not like that scene. I think it's unnecessary. I went on the internet and tried to Google why Stephen King wrote that scene and was not too impressed by his answer. The real answer, from what I understand, is that cocaine happened, and yeah, that scene is totally unnecessary. I'm actually surprised how much other reviewers and readers really just like toss it aside and don't worry about it. Like, I've seen reviewers that would tear apart a book that was written today with that same content, and they would just like call it incredibly problematic and disgusting. But because it's Stephen King and because it's it, I feel like it gets a free pass. That being said, before I make everyone super mad, I actually liked almost everything about this book. What I didn't like was the sewer scene, some of the other things I mentioned along the way, but overall, I ended up liking this one a lot more than I expected. I was so nervous to go back and read a really chunky book that I hated the first time. I think that's the case for a few reasons, and one being the fact that I've really grown to love coming-of-age narratives. I've read a lot more of them, and of course realized that a lot of them drew inspiration from this. And again, I think I have a better idea of what Stephen King was trying to do, was able to kind of separate the terrible things that the characters do from his authorial voice. And yeah, I actually end up liking it a lot. As with every Stephen King book, I typically say that I wish it was edited down more, and other than the really awful scene that I would cut out of the sewer part, I actually wouldn't specifically edit down anything else. I actually thought it was all really exciting, really well paced. I thought the character development was necessary, so even during the slower parts, both in the past and present, I thought it was really important to understand where the characters came from, where they were now as adults, and get to see their struggles. I love some of the issues to talk about, again, with abuse, infertility, and just the overall themes, the idea of us kind of forgetting our childhood selves as memory kind of starts to fade. I also really enjoyed the kind of metaphor that this whole book has, the fact that there is like something in the water of Derry, and so everything is about the sewers and all of that, so it kind of ties together in a very cheeky way with a very classic story or theme. And yeah, overall I like this one. This is actually the happiest I've had a vlog like this go in a while, so very pleased with that. I would recommend this book. I don't think it's the best place to start with Stephen King, although I know other people have done that and it's worked really well for them. But yeah, this is making me more hopeful to check out more of his work. I did enjoy Fairy Tale, and so I definitely think I'm starting to get my stride of finding out which kinds of Stephen King books are going to be up my alley. And so yeah, I think I need to read a few more and then hopefully come back to you with like a top 10 Stephen King list and really get to share my personal favorites, because yeah, this was one of my least favorite books by him, and now I'd probably put in my top 3 depending on my mood. It was really good. I really loved it and could totally see myself rereading it again. Maybe not immediately. It was long. Even for me, I'm a fast reader, but it was a long read, so enjoyed it, and yeah, moving on. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new to my channel, I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy. If you want to help me out, you can subscribe, you can give me a thumbs up, you can drop a comment, even if it's just a little clown. And if you want to help me out more, you can hit that little notification bell. That way you never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.